The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's The Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You know, it always amazed me the way that mainstream media, colluding with their Democrat allies, shut down any legitimate questions about the 2020 election. They told us endlessly that more than 60 federal lawsuits filed by Donald Trump challenging the 2020 election results had been decided against him, when in fact that's entirely false. Virtually none of them were ever actually heard on the merits. The evidence of voter fraud and irregularities is overwhelming, but almost all of those cases were thrown out on some technicality. If you went on to social media and you expressed your First Amendment right to point out, for example, that 205,000 more votes had been cast in the state of Pennsylvania than were registered to vote, or that in the Keystone State 1.5 million fraudulent votes were counted, and that the statewide spread was less than 82,000 votes between Trump and Biden, or that votes were counted in that 1.5 million included dead voters, ballots that were received before they were supposedly mailed out based on the postmarks, not possible. 330,000 electronic spikes in the voting machine, sudden increases for Joe Biden without explanation, 682 ballots that were illegally processed without any oversight whatsoever. You would soon find yourself canceled. And the media continue to insist, keep moving, there's nothing there. Clearly, Donald Trump is now committed to re-examining all the evidence of voter fraud, whether it was in Pennsylvania or in Georgia, where last week the FBI raided a warehouse used by the Fulton County Board of Elections. This was after two formal requests from the Department of Justice for these records and a third request from the FBI. Ultimately, the FBI moved in as part of a criminal probe to seize that material. Present and overseeing that raid was the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and now she is setting the record straight after Democrats went crazy over the fact that she was present at the FBI search of the Fulton County election hub in Georgia. In a letter addressed to congressional intelligence leaders, Director Gabbard confirmed she attended the search at the direct instruction of President Donald Trump, but emphasized that neither she nor the president issued any directives to agents. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that this was the case during a press conference on Tuesday. Leavitt said Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. There is nothing wrong with the president tasking a cabinet member with an issue that most Americans want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that is what Tulsi Gabbard has been directed to do. Gabbard's role, she explained in a letter herself, fell well under her statutory authority to coordinate intelligence tied to election security, an issue that patriots have been demanding be addressed since before what I think was the dubious and illegitimate 2020 election. The idea that Joe Biden, a candidate who was a veritable vegetable, got 81 million votes is not plausible. The idea that he ran an average of 20% stronger in the African-American precincts in Detroit and Philadelphia and Milwaukee and Miami is not likely, given the historical nature of Obama, regardless of what you may think of him. Gabbard is reportedly looking at both sides of the election equation. In other words, she is examining the security and the reliability and the manipulability of electronic voting machines. There is substantial evidence. It's interesting the extent to which AI goes to try to debunk this without foundation, that both the Venezuelan company Systematic, Dominion, as well as Chinese actors working through a company called Connect, may have been directly involved in changing votes in the electronic voting machines. But also, mail-in ballots have to be examined. Bill Barr, of all people, who was the Attorney General, said in an interview with Wolf Blitzer on CNN that mail-in ballots were an invitation for fraud. But then later, when the U.S. Attorney in Philadelphia told Attorney General Barr that he had very substantial evidence of election fraud in multiple counties in Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia County, Delaware County, and others, he was told to kill the case. So this is going to be a complete re-examination. The FBI obviously was operating under a lawful warrant, and at the scene they seized boxes containing ballots and election-related records from the heavily Democratic county. The question now is who in the government will examine that material. The FBI is not expert on election technology, and it would be very useful if those who were examined that evidence, in my view. While critics have rushed to publicize this move, Director Gabbard pointed to credible intelligence indicating electronic voting machines have in fact been vulnerable, as I say, to exploitation, raising the specter of potential foreign influence from countries like Venezuela and China, and underscoring the urgent need to safeguard America's democratic process. Democrats, of course, immediately accuse us of election interference. You see, that's the thing about the Marxists. They all play by something called Alinsky's rules. Saul Alinsky was a communist operative, a provocateur, and troublemaker who said, always accuse your opponent of exactly that which you yourself are doing. The worst thing you are doing, accuse them of that. They are the ones who have interfered in our election. Democratic officials, including Tim Kaine, remember him, he ran for vice president with Hillary Clinton, senator from Virginia. He attacked Tulsi Gabbard, saying that her presence was somehow outside her purview. But protecting elections from foreign manipulation has ramifications for the entire nation, and is actually something, in my opinion, as it is hers, should be at the top of the intelligence community's priority list. There are certain elements within our government today who probably do not want to examine whether these electronic voting systems can be manipulated, because there's strong evidence that some in the central intelligence agencies may have used them to manipulate elections abroad. There may even be evidence that they were involved in the heist in 2020. Director Gabbard has made it clear that she's not afraid to flout the supposed norms of the deep state bureaucracy in order to get answers. Let's remember that it was Tulsi Gabbard, not the previous director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, now the CIA director, who could have declassified the Russian collusion documents at the end of President Trump's second term, did not do so. Rick Grenell got a lot of this information to the public by declassifying it as the acting national security advisor, one of the greatest things that Rick ever did. Rick is a patriot and a friend. Director Gabbard clearly did very recently what Ratcliffe would not do in the first term, which is to say declassify all of the records pertaining to the 2020 election and to examine them. So I think that despite some bureaucratic roadblocks, Tulsi Gabbard is a woman of fortitude. She's extraordinarily sure-footed. She works well within the parameters of the law, but she's a woman of action based on her performance in declassifying the Russian collusion hoax and demonstrating to the American people that there was one seditious conspiracy, as she said, run by Barack Obama, that begins in July of 2016 in the Oval Office, manifests itself in the spying on Donald Trump's campaign, the entire Russian collusion hoax, the false elevation of the Steele dossier, which we learned last week was originally ironically paid for by patrons for Marco Rubio and then resold to Hillary Clinton's campaign. You got to hand it to these guys at Fusion GPS. They resold the same bogus dossier to two different quote-unquote clients. Amazing that Marco Rubio, who also as a member of the Senate, signed the Senate Intelligence Committee report that claimed Russian collusion, that that report, largely engineered by Senator Mark Warner, but also Trump hater Richard Burr, no longer in the Senate, didn't run for re-election because Trump would have taken him out, claimed Russian collusion based on a pasted together bunch of clippings, several sections in there on me, all of them wrong. When you ask them for the evidence, they say, oh, well, the Huffington Post reported this, so that makes it a fact. I kid you not. You remember Tulsi Gabbard was stripped of her security clearances when she spoke out against the Bidens and the Clintons. She was put on a secret watch list. This is a 4-term Democrat member of Congress who is still a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard, the U.S. Army. She still does reserve duty. This is someone who served her country with distinction in Afghanistan. So the president, in my opinion, has tapped the right person to look into this fraud. Coming up a little bit later on the Stone Zone, I want to talk about my good friend, the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, who is turning that country away from authoritarian communism and socialism because he correctly figured out that communism doesn't work and capitalism and austerity and cutting is working to turn around that nation. They once called it Venezuela was considered the Paris of South America. My good friend Javier Milei is returning to that country. He's making Argentina great again. Here to talk about it, Agustin Romo, who is a state congressman from the party of President Milei, representing Buenos Aires province in Argentina. He's also president of Libertad Avanza, pardon my Spanish, bloc in the Chamber of Deputies. He's a hardline supporter of Javier Milei and a shrewd political analyst. We'll talk about the situation in Argentina, where you see this happening across South and Central America. You saw it in Costa Rica yesterday. You saw it in Honduras. You saw it in Bolivia. You saw it in Chile. The forces of freedom are on the march. You saw it in Panama. The forces of freedom are on the march in this hemisphere. And President Donald Trump and Marco Rubio have made it very clear that they won't tolerate Marxist narco-terrorism in this hemisphere. When they say that the Venezuelan action by Trump to arrest Maduro is all about oil, they're not wrong. The president has very wisely denied oil to Cuba and China. This is brilliant. So not only are we getting the oil, but our two deepest enemies, the Chinese, who are getting 80% of the Venezuelan production, are denied this oil that they can't find elsewhere at this price. It was being sold to them extraordinarily cheaply. But it has also put extraordinary pressure on the Cuban regime. Now, Mexico has, at least temporarily, I think in violation of good faith with the United States, Mexico is supplying oil to Cuba. But this is a blow to the Cuban regime. It's very clear that the New York Times is right when they reported months ago that the dream of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is, let's face it, a new man, I think will go down as one of the great secretaries of state, carrying out the plans of Donald Trump. The dream is to bring the regime down, and I think there have to be some very nervous people in Havana right now. Meanwhile, they inaugurated Tito Asfura as the president of Honduras, despite an attempt by Libre to somehow stall the results of that Democrat election. That is good news. There's still epic corruption in Guatemala. I've written about it. We're going to talk about it more, not today, but later on in the Stone Zone shows. It is extraordinary the way democracy is on the march in this hemisphere, and how Donald Trump has taken what was the Monroe Doctrine and renamed it the Donroe Doctrine. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Well, former President Bill Clinton and twice failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton have agreed finally to testify before the House Oversight Committee, answering a subpoena as part of its investigation into the sex trafficker and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The agreement follows mounting pressure from the Congress, including the threat of a contempt proceeding, which would be voted on by the full House. They were subpoenaed last August, along with another of other high-profile figures. Now, as we noted, when Peter Navarro refused to testify, he was arrested, he was put on trial, he did time. So the question here is whether we have a two-tier justice system or a one-tier justice system. I think Chairman Comer made it clear his patient was running thin, and the Clintons realized the Republicans weren't kidding around. But just to be clear, a spokesman continues to insist falsely Clinton only flew on Epstein's plane for a few Clinton Foundation trips in the early 2000s. In fact, the FAA records show him on the Lolita Express 27 times. One time when he went with Epstein to pick up a massive check from another well-known pedophile, the Sultan of Brunei and his brother, epically famous for their underage harem. Epstein clearly both socialized and gave massive contributions for the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, Hillary's Senate campaign, Hillary's presidential campaigns, up until he was busted again in 2019. It's very dubious because in the emails and the photos that have been released, it's far more evident that the Clintons have greater culpability here. The claim by Bill Clinton that he was never on the island is provably false, based on the testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Her sworn testimony testifies about seeing Bill on Epstein's island at a party in which two 17-year-old twins had been flown in for Bill's amusement. I'm glad to see the Republicans in the House showing some courage, some grit, and holding Bill and Hillary Clinton, the penicillin-resistant syphilis of the American body politic, to justice. I'm Roger Stone. I'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. One of the world figures that I admire the most in the country is Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who I finally, after a pen pal relationship on the internet, who I finally met during President Trump's inauguration. We became friendly originally on social media when he was just kind of thought to be an eccentric economist who understood the free market and the fact that communism and socialism had failed. He used words about them that you can't use on a family radio show. He came out of nowhere to win the president of Argentina, defeating the Peronists. Peronism is a political culture with both right and left wings. It's kind of hard to explain. A lot of people who claim that they were adherents to Juan Perón, the founder of Peronism, have wandered far from what he was. Ideologically, he was neither right nor left. He kind of used techniques of both to govern, and then after him, Peronism has a right and left wing. But both of the Peronists drove the country economically into the ground. They destroyed what was once the strongest economy in South America, and Buenos Aires, which is a beautiful city, was considered the Paris of South America. Now, under Javier Milei and his adherence to free market principles, Argentina is having a renaissance. He is making Argentina great again. With me today, is one of his stoutest allies in the Congress there in Argentina. It is Agustin Romo. He's the state congressman for Buenos Aires province in Argentina. He's also president, essentially, of La Libertad Avanza bloc, which is the kind of like our hardliners in the House, and he's a very talented young political leader. Many people think he'll be president of Argentina someday. With Jesus Christ, all things are possible. But he's here to talk to me about Argentina. Augustin, welcome, and welcome into the Stone Zone.
Thank you, Roger, for having me. It's a great honor to be here. Obviously, I'm on your left and you're on the right.
It's very appropriate. So first tell us about you a little bit. How did you get involved in politics, and how did you first meet Milei? I met him online, and we clicked immediately. I saw potential greatness in him, but how did you meet him?
The first time I noticed the Javier Milei was on TV, and he was saying everything we want in Argentina to politicians do, and nobody was doing. Nobody was talking to young people that socialism was bad and capitalism was good and all like basic stuff. And we got a great disappointment with President Macri. We thought Macri was a right-wing president, and he didn't break down taxes and break down social securities like for the poor people and the government ways. So then come the Peronists again, and Milei was in the campaign to being the congressman, to Congress. He was running for Congress, and we started saying like, we want this guy to run for Congress, we want this guy to run for Congress, and we were in social media like very vocally supporting Milei, and they contact us, and we start working in the campaign in the early beginnings of Javier Milei like political career.
So in many ways, Milei is an internet-based phenomenon. Given the way internet communications changed after Elon Musk bought Twitter and set it free, he not only bought it, he then made public all the records of the Biden administration's manipulation and the Obama administration's manipulation of the content, canceling anybody who questioned the election of 2020, who questioned the safety and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccinations, who questioned whether Hunter Biden's laptop was real or whether it was quote-unquote Russian disinformation. If you questioned any of those things pre-Elon, you had no platform. Now, there's still extensive censorship on Facebook, extensive censorship on YouTube, extensive censorship on Instagram. They also play with you in terms of the manipulation of the algorithms, as you know. But do you think Javier Milei could have been elected without the internet?
No, Javier Milei couldn't get elected president without the internet or congressman, because at the first time he was elected for Congress. And in the 2021, in the election, he get his Congress seat. We were working on the campaign very vocally in social media, especially in Twitter, and we get our accounts banned, like the account of the best friend of mine, Daniel Parisini, El Gordo Dan, gets banned 3 or 4 days before the election, and then after the election, and when Javier Milei was already congressman-elect, we had a Zoom with Twitter Latin America, and they told us, we banned your accounts because you are manipulating the algorithm. And we were aware, we are not manipulating the algorithm. We are real people saying these things. That's why the things are getting into the first trending topics of the country. And then with Elon Musk by Twitter, the censor stopped, and we start controlling the totality of the.
So there's the proof. Just as they tried to successfully manipulated the 2020 election by taking the voices that were pro-Trump off the air, they took key operatives working from Milei, key communicators, key influencers off the air. In an attempt to manipulate the Argentine. But now let's talk about Argentina and the tremendous progress.
I have one thing to add to the 2020 election.
Yes.
The first trending topic of the world was Argentina supports Trump. We were making that trending topic, and our accounts get permanently suspended because of that trending topic on the night of the 2020 election.
I mean, there you have it. I mean, so just the use of Trump's name gets you suspended. When my friend Alex Jones says we're in an info war, he's not wrong. And people who think it's true that, in my view, Elon Musk is probably the single most important voice and advocate for the First Amendment since the founding fathers. He strikes a huge blow by paying a heavy price for X, but doing his very best to clean it up and returning voices to many, many people, myself included. And of course, then there is a True Social, which is great for talking to the base. It's a great way to communicate it. But I do want to talk about a problem we have here in the United States, and that is we have a terrific shortage of beef. Because of the radical environmental policies of Joe Biden and before Barack Obama, the herd, which is 162 million cows, down to like 26. We used to buy additional beef, high-quality beef, from Mexico, but Mexico has been struck with a screwworm epidemic, which we cannot let into the country. It's very dangerous. Agriculture Department is working on it. There is still some beef in southern Mexico that could be perfectly fine, but they haven't found a method yet to test it. The President of the United States, reaching out and talking to Milei, makes a terrific deal to increase the quota of fine Argentine beef, the greatest beef on the planet, yes. Argentine beef, into the United States, an 18% increase in the quota, which is very good for Argentina and very good for America, because pretty soon the price of hamburger in your local grocery store is going to be off the charts. There is a shortage. The U.S. cattlemen cannot solve this problem. They oppose the Argentine beef. This is a big win, but it seems to be delayed. Tell me what's going on here.
Well, I don't know what is going on in America of that, but in Argentina, we really want to export all the beef we can to the American markets because we think we have the best beef in the world. And I think President Milei is looking forward to this deal, and he is going to accept the terms of the United States to buy the beef of the Argentinian producers in our country. We export I think it's 700,000 of tons of beef the last year, so we are looking forward for that, for sure.
And I have visited Buenos Aires and I have eaten steak there, and I must tell you.
Have you drank wine?
I've drank wine as well, too much wine. And then I went out to all the antique shops looking for memorabilia pertaining to Juan and Evita Perón, of which I found a lot. They put their pictures on a lot, kind of like Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao put his picture on everything. You can get teapots with his picture. You can get beer mugs with his picture. The first person who understood that kind of branding was Napoleon. So when you were in the army, you were given a marble bust of the emperor when you joined the army, and you were given a medallion with his picture. Yes. They were highly prized. Napoleon put his image or his N on everything. He was one of the first guys in the world when it came to
the first
branding.
Populist, you say.
He was the first marketer and he was the first brander. And the giant hat and the gray greatcoat, that's all part of branding. The little corporal, they called him. Of course, Napoleon was not French. People don't realize that. Napoleon was a Corsican, born in Corsica. Corsica was owned and controlled by the Italians at the time of his birth. Napoleon did not speak French until he was either 10 or 12. He was from a relatively aristocratic but poor family in Corsica. He would ultimately become the emperor of France and take over half the world. In the end, come back once from exile. So I think this is my favorite Napoleon story. But Napoleon, obviously, at the end of the French Revolution, he realizes that the mayhem and all of the bloodshed is just chaotic. He stages a coup, takes control of the company, and he transforms France. He writes them a civil code. He lays out the cities of Paris, and he lays sewers and esplanades. He gives them the Code de Napoleon. He sets up schools teaching architecture, and he rebuilds the military. He really renovates the country, and then of course he begins his foreign adventures, and he captures most of Europe, only essentially be defeated by the British. They send him first into exile in Elba, an island. So they don't execute him. They send him where he's lightly guarded and in touch with his Confederates. The Bourbon Kings return to France. Things don't get any better. It's still chaotic. And then one night, in the dark of night, Napoleon with 300 men in longboats, they row to the south of France where they land. There's 300 of them. Napoleon marches for Paris, and by the time he gets there, he has an army, I checked this, of 150,000 men. 150,000. I thought the number was 50. It's 150,000 men. The kings and those in government just flee. When Napoleon gets to Paris, he walks into his old office and he is back in power. Ultimately, his overreach in Russia was the thing that undid him. But it stands to reason he's an Italian, because I don't think any Frenchman could conquer the world. I used to drive a Citroën, which was the bane of my existence. I didn't want a car that looked like everybody else, so I had these two Citroën DS. It kind of looked like a spaceship. It's a very forward modern car. Drove on an air suspension, went up and down. So when you turned on the car, it went up. When you turned off the car, it would level out. I had with the station wagon and a four-door sedan. They were very, very innovative cars. They had a center spoke, a steering wheel, but they were made by the French, and you couldn't find anybody work on them. But the French had been big in Indochina. So by the 70s, they had withdrawn from the U.S. market. If you were going to find mechanics to work on them, they had to be the Vietnamese or from Indochina. I finally gave up on them. But it was a French nightmare. It was a thing of beauty, but it didn't work very well.
Well, talking about that, I think that one thinks of one of the greatest problem of Argentinian education system in schools is that they teach us the French Revolution instead of the American Revolution. That is the Freedom Revolution, I think.
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting point you made to me. I'm going to tell my friend Nick Adams. Nick Adams has a foundation which teaches patriotism, teaches the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, teaches a history of the American Revolution. I think it's not surprising that the leftist teachers would teach the French Revolution, which is really hard to draw a conclusion from, because the Bourbon Kings were brutal,
yes.
But the people who were cutting off people's heads at the beginning of the Revolution, by the end of the Revolution, they themselves were getting their head chopped. It just became a bloodbath, which everybody was accused falsely of being a secret agent of the Bourbons, and the society essentially collapsed. The French Revolution gave way to the Republic as set up by Napoleon, and continued from that period forward. The French Republic later, obviously led quite ably by Charles de Gaulle. It's a great story about how a Citroën, the car, saved de Gaulle's life. I'll tell you that on the other side. We're talking to Agustin Romo. He is a congressman from Buenos Aires, a strong supporter of my good friend Javier Milei, one of the leaders of his party. Many people say that Agustin himself will be president of Argentina someday. So from my mouth to God's ears. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, where we talk politics, news, history, style, fashion. Today we even talked a little bit about steak. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
And he's a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. Is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Agustin Romo. He's a congressman representing Buenos Aires in the party of my good friend Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, and I want to talk a little bit about the the improvements in the economy under Milei. I mean, he said from the beginning, communism doesn't work, socialism doesn't work, capitalism works. We got to cut spending, we got to cut taxes, we got to cut regulations. He's done all of that, and it doesn't happen immediately, but like an ocean liner, it is turning around.
Well, in the last government of the Peronist coalition, they had an inflation in 4 years of 1,000%. In 4 years they had 1,000% of inflation, and in the last year the inflation rate was 211%. 211%, and within right now in 2025 the inflation rate is in the whole year 35% in our government. Also, the poverty was 54%, and now the poverty is 32%, and in some new studies is 29%. So these are pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, the point, of course, is that he's bringing prosperity and opportunity. People who are not unemployed are employed. Those below the poverty line went from more than half to less than a third.
Yes,
close to a third, which is a huge significance. And you won the midterm elections.
Yeah, we won the midterm elections, I think, because of these great economic results, and also we got a lot of government waste. We closed a lot of secretaries and ministries, and we get rid of 100,000 public employees that were doing nothing. They're just cashing out their checks and nothing.
Exactly what President Trump needs to do and is doing. Well, you guys ran a textbook, modern, data-based, internet-based campaign. I'm a big fan of your campaign chief, Santiago. He's a good man.
Yeah,
and you guys ran a great campaign, and you are making. You're making America great. So please give my regards to Santiago Caputo. I hope to see the President Milei here in a few weeks at a Hispanic Latinos for Trump event here in Palm Beach. I look forward to seeing your president. He's a great man. And I salute you for the role that you played in his election, and now standing up as the leader of the Libertad Avanza bloc in the Chamber of Deputies, which is kind of like what would we call our caucus, our
leader of the MAGA bloc.
The leader of the MAGA bloc.
I'm like in the state Congress. I'm like the minority leader.
There you go, the minority leader. All right, Guy. Thank you, and God bless you for joining us today in the Stone Zone. And until tomorrow, God bless you.
Thank you very much,
and Godspeed.